That has never happened before. We've never seen it happen. Really haven't, I don't think. The last time that we had a real tariff increase was the 1930s in the Great Depression, and all it did was break up the economy and lead to the Second World War.
Thanks for listening to the McKay interview. My guest this time is Professor Emerita of Economics at Geneva University, Victoria Curzon-Price. She's a highly regarded intellectual with an international reputation and a dear friend. We talk about tariffs, the pros and the cons, and the evidence on both sides. We also talk about the quixotic nature of the Trump second term, especially regarding international trade. I ask her about the USA's dominance of world trade and consequences thereof. And in closing, we talk about Switzerland, the American buffers it ran into recently on tariffs, and what advice, if asked, she would give the Swiss federal government. Professor Curzon-Price makes some salutary and memorable remarks. I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, everyone. The quixotic nature of the Trump presidency, whether his first or second term, has meant that many arguments, perhaps even truths which a lot of us took for granted and are now being questioned, even overthrown. This has led me at least, I cannot speak for all of you listening, but me at least, to examine or re-examine understandings that I've held for many years. After all, to be fair to Donald Trump, some of his statements on a number of issues do contain a grain of truth. One of the topics which is very current and very relevant to us in Switzerland is tariffs. Switzerland has come off badly, at least compared with other advanced European economies. And in my professional life, I do not deal with the details of tariffs, rates, and tariff policies. And I guess that most of you listening don't either. So I turn to an expert in international economic theory to help me, and all of you, obtain a better understanding of the pros and cons of tariffs, to hazard a guess as to what might be going on in the president's mind, and whether his tariff strategy will turn out the way he wishes, or not. My guest today is Professor Emeritus Victoria Curzon-Price. She was previously a professor of economics, 1982 to 2008, and director of the European Institute at the University of Geneva. She was also a member of the Governing Council of the University of Geneva from 2003 to 2007. She's widely held in great regard by all who know her. She's also an old friend who's been on my show before and is someone who I admire for her lucid explanation of complicated issues. Professor Curzon-Price, Vicky, welcome back to the McKay interview. Here we are in the comfort of Geneva's splendid Hotel Royal, and thanks for making time for me.
Thank you, Michael, for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to chat with you about nice, complicated subjects.
Yes, great to see you again. Before we start, Vicky, let me say right at the beginning that I would like you to give me a disinterested assessment of the arguments for and against the USA's current policy on tariffs. And I leave it to you whether or not you wish to declare your personal position on the subject as our conversation continues. My first question is rather unfair, but I'll ask it anyway. As an economics professor of many years' experience, please can you try to get into the president's head and explain why he has adopted the current policy on tariffs?
Yes, I think I can do that. The United States is a huge economy. It's very big. And it enjoys probably quite a bit of economic, monopsonistic power in that regard. It imports a lot.
Monopolist.
Monopsonist is somebody. That's somebody who has such a large demand. Is so a big customer. Is not a big producer, but a big customer. He can withhold the demand or promote it. If withhold demand, his supplier goes broke, perhaps. And so it's like a monopoly, but it's back to front. A monopoly.
Say the word again.
Monopsony.
Oh, I see. I wasn't familiar with that word.
Okay. Well, the United States can be a very big market for certain producers abroad. And one of the things that can happen is that the, let's say, car producer in Germany, in order to maintain a share of the US market from cars exported from Germany to America, charging a 35% tariff, will absorb that in their cost, in their own prices. And the tariff might be paid for by the producer abroad who's going to lower their prices. This is known as a terms of trade gain for the United States. If the United States can play this game, which is based on economic power, they are beneficiaries to that extent. We don't know for the moment how this is playing out. It's probably sort of 1/3 reduction in prices and 2/3 are being paid by American consumers. But we do know that part of the tariff, as far as the United States is concerned, is going to be paid for by the exporters who are abroad and paying to maintain their share of the American market.
What's the evidence from past experience in favour of tariffs then in that respect?
Oh, well, we haven't actually been in this situation where it's very theoretical. We haven't seen a really big economy like the United States playing such a protectionist game.
So this is a first?
Not a first. I would think that the British Empire, when the Great Britain introduced imperial preference in 1930s, in 1931, I believe. Other countries which wanted to maintain their trade relations with the British Empire might have had to reduce their prices. But, this is a hypothesis. There haven't been that many cases in economic history, but I can certainly see that the United States could benefit from a terms of trade gain by whacking on with really big tariffs and making foreigners pay for them through lower prices. That's one gain. The other gain, as far as Trump is concerned, is, of course, tariffs bring in revenue. And we all know that the US government likes revenue, the federal government needs it. And he can go around saying, foreigners are paying, and it's not us. Well, that's not true, as everybody knows. Some of the tariffs will be paid for by American consumers. But tariffs have always been used by governments for revenue. So that's a plus. Then he wants to attract manufacturing back to the United States. Well, he's not going to get much in way of textiles, clothing, or basic manufacturing. But if he imposes very high tariffs on certain high value-added manufacturing activities, he can get foreign, non-American producers to invest in America and produce there. And that is part of it would be known as industrial policy. It's getting industry back.
For industrial example, policy. High-tech products.
Yeah, for example. Well, the current example is the chips, microprocessors.
And what does your experience in history teach us about the likelihood of having the skilled labour to actually do that job if they come back home?
It's for sure that if you have an industrial policy to develop a particular sector, it's a good idea to check whether you have the people to do it. That's true. But for instance, industrial policy or a developing country to jump stages in economic growth, they will put on high tariffs on manufactured products, develop a manufacturing industry themselves, and then finally say, we are now developed. Germany did this with success at the end of the 19th century. Southeast Asia has done this in the 20th century with great success. Japan is well known to have done this.
With American investment?
Yeah, you get investment, you get technology. That's in a way the easy part. But they love a protected environment and a nice big market, and they'll come in so those are called the infant industry arguments. And Latin America has tried it but not been successful.
And why would they have failed in Latin America?
Because it's not enough to put in tariffs. You also have to have good law enforcement, proper tribunals, and property rights, basically. South America didn't work. But in Asia, South Asia, they certainly did. The whole of Southeast Asia has developed very quickly and successfully. Now, whether Trump will be successful in luring back manufacturing to the United States, that's another issue. I was talking about infant industry protection, getting a country from developing into semi-developed and sometimes developed status. Japan, take Japan as the faint example. Now, when a mature industrial country tries to retain manufacturing which has fled abroad, that has never happened before. We've never seen it happen. Really haven't, I don't think. The last time that we had a real tariff increase was the 1930s in the Great Depression, and all it did was break up the economy and lead to the Second World War. I mean, one of the reasons for that. So it's a dangerous game to play, but it can be profitable.
And tell me a little bit now about the arguments against tariffs and the historical evidence on the other side of the equation.
Well, it starts with Adam Smith and David Ricardo and all the sort of Scottish Enlightenment, all in favour of free trade.
And these are 19th century.
These are 18th and 19th,
yeah.
18th
and 19th
century. And gradually their arguments, take hold and people start thinking about the benefits of free trade. But you must remember that in previous years you had what's known as mercantilism, that the state would run things, a pretty small state, but very powerful. It was the monarch and his advisors. And think of Henry VIII or Charles V of Spain. They ran, and their main revenue was tariffs. And that's why we have all these lovely stories about smuggling and everything in those days.
The King's Men on the coast of Devon and
exactly.
the coast of Dorset.
Yeah. But that's how monarchs financed, and they had tariffs between town and country. You couldn't bring goods into Paris without paying a tax. So taxing trade is a very old game, and it's to the benefit of the monarch. Mercantilism was definitely a bore for the population, but as a way of raising taxes, and then the king would go to war and enlarge his territory or do whatever he wanted to.
Because the national purse belonged to the monarch.
Exactly. Well, you must think of Donald Trump's tariffs in a way as being a return to mercantilism. The result goes into the coffers, and he can do what he likes with it, so to speak. It's sort of free money. So along come a whole lot of people saying, but this is not in the general interest. Well, of course it's not in the general interest to have a monarch, taxing the population and going to war as the results. The point is that tariffs benefit some people and hurt others. It's a balance. And the theorists come up with the idea that if you take the two groups together, the ones who lose out lose more than the ones who gain from tariffs. And therefore, society as a whole loses. Okay, that's not a difficult concept. But of course, then you say, well, why do we have tariffs? Because tariffs benefit some people. And so therefore, if they're in power, they'll put on tariffs.
The stakeholders are blue-collar workers or
whatever.
The shareholders?
That depends on who's in power. Some people will say, the blue-collar workers, so let's protect the motor car industry, And otherwise, we can find ways of even protecting service industries if we really want to. Not with tariffs, but with regulation, we can do that. So you can see that the reason for free trade is it's in the general good. But the general good, and certainly in current-day policies, is not what politicians are after. They are basically subject to lobbying by all sorts of people, and the lobbyists say, we want protection.
For my particular industry and my sector.
I need it. And they say, we'll bring you so many votes. And the interesting thing is, we have in economic theory the public choice theory.
What is that?
Public choice is why? Because the economists say, why? After all these 200 years of economic thinking, we have determined that free trade is the best for the general good. But then, so why do we still have tariffs? Well, because politics is not about the general good. It's about the good for certain
The one interest group
industries.
over another.
Yeah, that's right. And the general good actually has no political party looking after the general interest.
I see.
You see, and the other point of the public choice theory is that the general interest is you take, say, 1 billion. Let's just take 100. It's easier to work out. I gain 100 if I get this tariff. That's fantastic. That is my firm. I get 100. But the consumers who will pay for this, perhaps there are 100 consumers, so each one will pay $1 or 1 million or whatever it is. Or if there are 10,000, they'll only pay 10 cents, right? If on average. But I get all these little rivers of money come to me. And so you have the guys who are paying 10 cents a year don't even feel it. They don't even see that it's there. But the one who's getting 100, he's doing very well.
Substantial.
So you see, that explains why in a democracy, or in any government, you will get protectionism and you will get tariffs, although they're not in the general interest, although the great majority of people suffer, but they suffer very little, and a few people gain a lot. It's a game.
And not necessarily billionaires.
Yeah, they can be billionaires.
That seems to be the other aspect of this particular current situation.
Exactly. Now we have billionaires who've made their money and who make sure they want to keep it, and there are a lot of them in MAGA world, encouraging, saying, yes, Donald, you've got it right.
My guest today is Professor Emerita of Economics, Victoria Curzon-Price of the University of Geneva, and we're talking about tariffs, the pros and cons. Vicky, this is not supposed to sound like a grand or even vacuous question or statement, but are we witnessing the end of the post-World War II economic order? Are we in fact living in times of momentous economic, not to mention political and social change, or is this maybe not such a serious phase that we're going through? It seems serious because of all the noise around it. How do you see it? You've seen a lot of
it's a
ups
real
and downs.
change.
It is a
it's
real
a
change.
Big change.
Yeah.
It's a big change. You see, it was in the United States' interest after the Second World War to behave in a very sort of generous, looking out for perhaps the general good.
The Marshall Plan, for
The Marshall Plan, not entirely innocent. They wanted to build up the European economy as a bulwark against the Soviet Union. At that time, the jury was still out. Perhaps the Soviet Union was going to be more efficient. And we wanted
We didn't know.
We didn't know at that time. And so the Europeans were helped enormously by the United States. And we were not only given Marshall aid money, we were told, lower your tariffs among yourselves, get rid of quotas, get rid of exchange controls, and keep them towards us. We don't mind. You can create the European Common Market, which is a big system which prefers free trade among European countries, but still high tariffs between Europe and the United States. So it's really, it doesn't look good for American exporters. If they want to maintain a foothold in the growing European market, they must invest there. So why would the United States be so, inverted commas, generous? Why would they encourage? Well, because they wanted to build up Europe. It was industrial policy. Yeah. Build up Europe, build up the European economy so that it can withstand, show the world that markets work and be stronger and contribute to NATO and all these things. So I remember we were discussing trade policy in the old days, and we would sometimes ask, why is the United States being so generous? In terms, once we'd understood that, mercantilism and good reasons to having tariffs if you're a big country like the United States. And the answer was given by Joseph Nye, professor of political science. I remember him so well. He's the one who invented the term soft power.
NYE.
NYE, yeah. Joe Nye. And Joe Nye said, but it's in the interest of the United States to build up this network of friends, of, people who look to us for help, and we can afford it. So, it's in our interest to do this, to be so generous. But gradually, as time went by, we see the United States now no longer interested in this soft power. They're interested in something else now.
I see. Now, Vicky, something close to Geneva's heart.
Yeah.
Is the World Trade Organization being undermined by big members like the United States and China? And what are the consequences for ordinary people? Not for the billionaires, for the farmers and ordinary people, the factory workers. What are the consequences, whether here, locally or far away, in less economically robust countries, if this New World Order
it's something, it's amazing,
fades away?
Well, the WTO, yes, an international organization, as you say, fades away, but they never disappear completely. Well, let's hope. WTO is based on a treaty, and the treaty is still in force. The current administration in the United States ignores it completely, invoking national security, which of course is always a let-out clause. It might live to see another day, one day, I don't know. But what the Trump administration has done is they've suspended most favored nation treatment. And very briefly, most favored nation treatment is the idea that you form a club, a trading club, which is what the GATT is, or WTO is a trading club.
That was the General Agreement on Trades and Tariffs, which preceded the World Trade Organization.
Exactly. Yeah. But the WTO is just the organizational hat over this General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. And it's the General Agreement which is important. And the most favored nation treatment just says that the members treat each other as friends. And if I negotiate with Brazil, an import tariff into my EU on, let's say, on meat products, that reduction in tariffs has to be applied also to Argentina, New Zealand, Australia, all other countries. It's most favored. They all get the same treatment as the most favored nation.
That sounds a little bit counterintuitive.
Well, it's because you can't otherwise you discriminate. And if you start having discrimination and you treat Brazil better than Argentina, and New Zealand worse than Australia, then that creates, first of all, the economists would say inefficiency, but apart from anything else, it would be politically disruptive.
But most favored implies treating other people better than others.
I know it's an old-fashioned term, but what it really means is don't discriminate. Don't discriminate. So, of course, Trump applying 10% to the UK and 39% to Switzerland for the import of whatever, let's say watches or elastic bands or whatever it is discriminating. So he's suspended most favored nation treatment and therefore sowing discord among nations. I mean, this is a first rule of laws.
It's a tactic.
It's just ignoring a principle of law. You don't go and have a law which says, I'm going to discriminate between Michael and Vicky, and he can park where he likes, but she can't. You can't, I mean, law is law. It has to apply to everyone equally, otherwise it's no longer law.
And is it correct, because I don't follow these things so closely, that the court that handles these issues in the WTO has essentially been suspended?
Well, they're panels of, there's not really, they don't have much, they don't have much, they never had much bite to them anyway, in the best of times. But in the old days, nobody would have, suspending most favored nation treatment is a serious issue, because that means that you're in fact suspending law, commercial law, and you're treating people differently. And that's terrible. I mean, that really means there's no more law. Yeah. You just do as you please.
It's the law of the jungle.
Exactly, exactly.
Can you explain, in simple terms for my benefit, what difference it makes that the USA today is still the dominant economic power and that the dollar is still very widely used as the international currency for trade?
Yes, well, the dollar is used because for several reasons, but one of the main reasons is that the United States has been running a deficit, a trade balance deficit for a very long time. Now that means that they've been importing more than they export. So that means people abroad, outside the Union, have been accumulating dollars. So what do you do with these dollars? And for a long time, you would just go back to the United States and buy U.S. Treasury bonds, and they would sit in the U.S. Treasury, and that would help the United States finance whatever they were building, roads or whatever. But a whole market was set up, started growing in London and Frankfurt and Paris in dealing with these American dollars outside the United States. And a big bank would be running, exchanging dollars in Frankfurt.
I see.
You see, so that's because this accumulated deficit, it's been going a long time, because the Joseph Nye and soft power, first of all, helped the U.S. deficit, and then the United States hasn't really kept its fiscal house in order either. And let me just do a little bit of economics here. It's that, how can I explain it easily? When a country is running a big deficit like that over many years, you have to, it's not just because it's inefficient, it's also because either the households or the businesses or the government is overspending in some way. They're spending more than they're saving. And that, if you look at this savings, investment, consumption, government deficits, try to look for the imbalances. And if a country overspends, and it can be the government, it can be business investing, or it can be consumers not saving enough, then you're going to get a deficit. The deficit is simply the result of an imbalance in savings.
And in your experience, is it the Americans don't save as much? Or
no, they've forgotten. They don't save.
The defense industry?
They don't save.
They don't save?
No.
They don't save.
No.
Yeah.
Now, the Swiss have a little country like Switzerland has a big surplus.
And the Japanese, don't they, as well?
Yes, they're also into this bind. Mm. But the Swiss in particular, if you look at Switzerland, it has this sort of, over the years, every year there's a surplus in the current account.
It's because Swiss people save.
They save.
Through insurance and all
furthermore,
sorts of
we've put the golden rule debt break on federal spending, which has been copied by many cantons. So our public finances are in order. So the public finances are in order. The Swiss public saves a lot, and Swiss firms are investing abroad.
And the domestic market is so small anyway.
That's right.
Yeah.
So Switzerland has a big surplus, which has to do something with. Mm. And it's simply because it's the behavior. It's nothing to do with the exchange rate, which keeps rising. It's to do with the savings and investment behavior.
Mm. The Trump administration casts itself as the victim in this, and Trump is very good at casting himself as if, look at me, feel sorry for me kind of thing in this argument, the trade argument we're talking. Has the rest of the world really taken advantage of the USA, or has the USA really just been, as you were saying, or implied, negligent in terms of its trade?
Well, go back to the Joseph Nye period and the soft power period. The United States was taking on a lot of generosity for the reasons we've discussed. And in particular, in the case of China, China entered the GATT and WTO as a developing country.
I remember.
And has special and differential treatment. Now, part of the generosity, part of the soft power of the United States, and we in Europe followed it, against our instincts, but nevertheless we followed the lead, is that we apply our open trade to developing countries.
Sorry, followed the granting of this status to China, or
okay, I'll go back.
Yeah.
When China joined, it joined the WTO as a developing country, like let's say Brazil, or Argentina, or Colombia, right? Developing country. Now, developing countries for many years previously had got special status. It's known as special and differential treatment.
Right.
In order to promote their economic development. As we said earlier, behind high tariffs, you can promote economic development. doesn't always work. You must have the right people, you must have the right investment, you must have rule of law as well. Okay, so many developing countries maintained high tariffs, sometimes for industrial policy reasons, but also for raising revenue, because they had no better way.
Because often their tax collection was very weak.
Completely weak, exactly. So they needed high tariffs to collect revenue, and in return had free access to the big markets, almost at very low tariffs. That was known as special and differential treatment. And the purpose was to promote economic growth and prosperity in the developing world, part of the rich countries' soft power politics. In comes China in 2000, whenever it was, 2004?
I'm not sure.
2000, I can't remember. I used to know all these dates from the... Anyway, turn of the century. In comes China saying, we're a developing country. We still need to apply high tariffs on your goods, but we want access to your markets. So we said, okay. With the belief that coming into the WTO, China would become, fully paid-up member of the world legal system, the commercial economy, rule of law, the multilateral legal system. And it's turned out that they've been very successful. It's the latest example of successful industrial policy coming in. High tariffs, high protection, develop behind it, and then I emerge as a developed nation. And today they have announced that they are now going to give up their status as a developing country in the WTO.
So that's breaking news.
That's breaking news. They have said that they're now a developed country, and they will give up this status. Now that's what I think it's known as graduation, and it very seldom happens. I know we've been trying to get India to agree that it's no longer a developing country. Well, they say, we're still a developing country. Indonesia and all these things.
They still get aid from some Western governments.
Exactly. So, we're still a poor country. So don't ask us to join the group of the developed nations, because then we have to give special and differential treatment ourselves.
Let's turn our attention closer to home. Vicky, before we finish, the situation here in Switzerland. What should Switzerland do in this new world of, I think it's 39%, you said, tariffs that we now inhabit? I mean, what should be the I wouldn't say the behaviour, but the strategy of the Swiss government in this new situation? It's been quite a shock to the system in the last couple of weeks. Absolutely.
And it just shows how vulnerable we are, because there's very little Switzerland can do to leave us. There's nothing. They've got no leverage on the United States. In fact, the United States, whenever it gets bored, it kicks Switzerland around. It loves kicking Switzerland around. A few more. The banks have been hiding gold, and and then they do all sorts of wicked things with the exchange rate. Kick Switzerland in the teeth, and we'll get something out of them. That's an American sport.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. But so you can't expect Switzerland to be able to get anything much out of the United States. We'll be accused of exchange rate manipulation and all that sort of thing. So there's a big deal on pharmaceuticals.
Yes, I was going to ask you about
that. But just to say that Switzerland has to acknowledge that it is alone in the world, and it's not the time to kick the EU in the teeth, because shortly we will be asked to vote on the EU agreement that's coming.
Yes.
I would say one thing is not to make enemies of both the United States and the EU. That would be a mistake.
But there are so many in Switzerland that seem to enjoy being alone. Are they being badly advised by their political classes?
They have an exaggerated notion of Switzerland's ability to survive alone. But Switzerland can't survive alone. If you look at Switzerland, it needs prosperous neighbours. It needs the cooperation of its immediate neighbourhood. It really does. A rule of law, you can hope for it, but hope. There's not much left. So if there's no rule of law, even more reason to look after your good relations with your immediate neighbours. You don't want to be in problems with them. Really not. Really not. That's one thing I would say. The other one is you look out for friends all over the world and make sure that you've got good pals and say, we don't mind trading with you, and they'll go on.
Well, the Swiss do that, surely.
Yeah, we'll do some more of it. And the other one, I would check on my energy prices. I think the cost of energy is, in this day and age, the main element of competitiveness. If you're really looking to maintain your status as a manufacturing or indeed service provider, you need cheap energy. You need to have a competitive energy. I'm not an expert. I don't know how you do that. I would add a meter to most of the big dams and keep the nuclear power stations going as long as possible. Perhaps we'll build another one or two.
There's a big debate in the UK
anyway,
where the price of energy is so.
But you have to have
so
cheap energy in the coming decades, and then maintain immigration of good brains, well-trained people. Make sure you've got that. I don't think you can do more. You certainly can't just sort of change the United States much. You can negotiate, but they won't give way very much.
I mean, I know you don't have any special knowledge, Vicky, but do you think that Switzerland prepared itself badly for the recent tariff negotiations? We all saw the disappointment on the faces of the two leading Swiss federal councillors leaving Washington, D.C. after the negotiations. What do you think went wrong? Well,
they were told that we're going to go for your pharmaceuticals. And they didn't, we thought that pharmaceuticals had been exempted. That was what the news was. But after a week later, we realized that they were just thinking about how to really hammer the Swiss, and that is to put 200% tariffs on pharmaceuticals. Oh, dear, oh dear.
200%?
200%, yes.
Oh, goodness me.
So the Trump, I'm sure they were just told, we're reserving the real whammy for the pharmaceuticals.
So that's still a possibility?
But more than a possibility. Yeah. The only thing that Switzerland can do is to quickly check up, make allies with other European pharmaceutical producers, and come up with a proposal on how to share the costs of producing new useful molecules. Because it's true. Here you started our talk by saying there's a grain of truth in what Trump says. And in this particular case, it's true. Switzerland produces these beautiful magic mushroom stuff, makes us all live longer and better. Big demand all worldwide, but it costs a rocket to produce them and to get them approved.
Yeah. And the length of time as well.
Yeah. So they have to recoup in 20 years. That's the length of time of the patent. And if they negotiate with the UK has a single buyer, National Health Service, a monopolist is buying the stuff, and they force the price down. Most of the European countries, Spain, Italy, Portugal, the same thing. They force the price down. Even in Switzerland, the price of these molecules is kept low because we're so desperate about the cost of health insurance. And where there's no monopoly, single supplier, the United States of America. There it's insurance companies. And they are, by law, not allowed to be a cartel to buy the stuff. So each one of them negotiates what they can. And the prices of Swiss pharmaceuticals are much higher in the United States than they are in Switzerland. But we know, that as a developed world must find a more efficient way of paying pharmaceutical companies for the cost of developing new medicines, because we all agree that we like the new medicines. Yeah, we just don't like to pay for them.
Of course.
Okay.
Last question. You've already hinted at the answer, but I'll ask you again anyway. If you're in a position of being asked advice by our political leaders in Switzerland on the current situation, what would that advice be?
Oh, I would send out delegations to the United States and do the best I can, but I would mainly check up with my European partners and see what we could do somehow, because there's not much of Europe is the only game in town for Switzerland. And so Switzerland...
Proximity and size.
Yeah. Well, I mean, who else would you talk to to get an agreement on pharmaceutical? They are natural allies. They're democracies. They're developed. We face the same problem. We all have aging population. We have the same problems. So I think we should really cultivate the EU. We don't have to join the EU, but we must make sure that we remain on good terms. Yeah.
Vicky, thank lots to reflect on. I'll go home and take my medicine this evening. I really thank you, because you are so lucid and clear, and it's helped me a lot to understand and begin to see things slightly better now. Thanks for your time. My guest today has been Professor Emerita Victoria Curzon-Price of the University of Geneva, and I'm most grateful to you, Vicky. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. It's been fun.
Thanks for listening to the McKay Interview podcast. You can find my show on most of the leading podcast platforms, plus the complete playlist dating back to 2012 can be found by writing The McKay Interview into your browser. Thanks again for listening.